Good evening, everyone. It's Tom Sydney Bushnell, aka Numbers, here from Psych.Club, from the Tom Numbers Show. News of Tom Numbers on top of your game. And I got my buddy 107, who is top of his game, but he's actually top of, or at least pretty high up in a building, looking over at a tennis court. That reminds me of my buddy Pat, Wimbledon champion. I just did something with Pat recently. So how are you, sir? How are you, Juan?
Good.
I'm going to hazard a guess. Is that somewhere out in the mid-Pacific?
It is, and it's actually a very nice day. You know, in the mountains around these kind of areas, you get, clouds. A lot of times you go to the beach and it's spectacular. So
Yeah.
I haven't been to the beach. I've been here. I think this is my 6th trip here this year. And haven't had a chance to go to the beach once, but the stuff that's going on is just so critical. And so I keep, but it is, what's nice is it is pleasant to be able to kind of go out day or night, and the temperature's comfortable and you don't have to dress for it and like that. Yeah. So it's very pleasant. I do enjoy tropical climates, and so yeah.
Nice one. Well, it caught my attention, the tennis court. Like I was saying, Pat Cash, Wimbledon champion in '87, is a friend. Matt Letizia brought us together, and Pat was, I'm going to have posted it, but he's a bit of a rocker as well. He was playing electric guitar. I'm going to put it out on my social media, but he's a bit like McEnroe, likes to play the guitar as well. So there you go, tennis court. So Pat, if you're watching, well, I sent it to you. So there's a nice salute to you, buddy. So Juan, I've got a question for you. There's kind of an elephant in the room, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. So obviously we had the eclipse just a few days ago, and we can talk about that during the show. But there's appeared to be on radar, and there's other radar, I don't know whether they're companies, but radar websites that say, oh no, this is not the case. But there seems to be a large, almost like a mini continent size of a blip, a black mark, kind of floating up from Antarctica, going up past Africa, up the African west coast, up the Atlantic, and then people are projecting how it's going to turn out, in a few days' time. And you've obviously been to Antarctica. You're our Antarctica guy. So I wonder, what is that? What is that thing on the radar? Because if it's a glitch, it seems like a pretty big glitch, and I'm feeling it might not be a glitch. So I wanted to see what you thought or knew about it.
Well, you snowed me on that one. I am not aware of it yet. I may have been too involved in some of the other stuff I'm doing to have paid attention. I'd have to take a look. But, nothing of any mass is moving very fast if it's ice or something like that. So, those distances down there are pretty vast.
This thing on the right, when you see it, it looks like I got my piece of shungite here. So it started off kind of circular, but it's kind of got a bit of a tip. It almost reminds me of the black shield mark that was on the Buckingham Palace during 2020. But it looks like it's just kind of, it looks vast. And it's probably a little bit smaller than India, and it's just kind of going up the Atlantic. It looks like it's headed, it started off in the Antarctic region, and it's heading upwards. But then it kind of flashes off, and then it comes back on again. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not a sonar or radar.
Well, again, if it's flashing off and on, you may have an area that one of the groups of satellites covering it is, having some type of a broadcast issue or something like that. So I'd have to see what the sources of the data are and see what might be going on. So. It might be a big bird passed in front of the radar, and it looks about 10 times bigger than it is. It sounds funny, but we had a falcon one time that nested near a military base, and it had created something or other on kind of a post guy wire thing. And the technicians didn't realize it at first. They thought they had a problem with part of the sensor group in that area. And it wasn't until somebody walked outside, looked, and was trying to figure it out and realized, oh, look, there it is. And I don't know that they would have lasted very long with that much radiation in that area, but you just don't know. Sometimes people see things that are anomalous and they get all wound up, and you just got to do a little examination to figure out that it's something fairly simple. And we have so many really, really, really critical things going on that right now everybody really has to slow down a little bit, double check your facts, double check, your extrapolations, because there just really isn't time right now at this second to get off into frivolity. We have very real things that are very big threats to large populations and to the stability of kind of the world peace thing, that I just don't really, people are stretched emotionally and financially and everything else at this point in time, that we don't really have the luxury of some of the silliness that might otherwise be entertaining or interesting. We've got really serious issues that are going to cost a lot of lives here shortly, and create real drama. So I'm curious, but I have a feeling that there's probably a relatively simple explanation for it.
Okay.
That said, by the way, that said,
it made me think of when you mentioned the Heavenly City, when you left that cliffhanger at the end of our last show, and I was like, is that something coming down? It was interesting because you left us on the cliffhanger with that one. You said, it's a cube, it's 3,000 miles across. This thing doesn't look like a cube, but it's maybe not 3,000 miles across, but it's probably a good, maybe 1,000. It's pretty large. So,
yeah.
Well,
I mean, you've got iceberg areas of Antarctica that can break off large ice shelves that are pretty good size, but and even then, compared to Antarctica, they're not that big. But we'd be hearing all about it if we had something that was actually of great significance broken off. I'm not aware of anything right now of that nature that is broken off.
Double check your facts. That comes to 217. Mission Impossible. From Sidney Bushnell. Lady Diana Francis Spencer, 217. Interesting. Wow. Okay. So let's do a debrief, if we could, on the eclipse, because that happened. Obviously, that had been planned a long time in the future. I mean, the eclipse, but there were things around it, such as the Nineveh line, the Salem line, other cities or towns that were passed, and a lot of people looked forward to it. A lot of people were able to witness it. A lot of us that weren't there got to see it, online, and it looked spectacular. It looked amazing. But was there any things that, obviously there was the element of CERN and NASA. Do we see anything maybe behind the scenes that most of us, well, I say us, most people in the world wouldn't be aware of, but some things that were critical that were going on during that time that will maybe make more sense as we go into the future?
Well, I think people need to kind of understand there's wizards, magicians, Merlins who have been aware, who track things like these celestial events, not just years or decades in advance, but hundreds, even thousands of years forward and back. And so, in fact, the reason that the West changed from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar was because of the sailors that returned from the Mayan and Aztec regions in South America with these very precise calendars, and they understood and could predict the lunar and solar eclipses, as well as some of the planetary eclipses, Venus. And that was when they realized that there was a better calendar than the one they had. And part of the thing, for example, eclipses, magicians, witch doctors, whatever, they had the science to be able to map out eclipse dates and times very accurately. And then they would try to do their rituals around those eclipses, and for the unwashed masses, they would try to, make it appear as though they had caught the eclipse or God had responded to something they were doing during an eclipse. So, those that didn't understand the mechanics would be stunned and startled and astonished. And then you would, give the witch doctor all sorts of extra credit for having, made this happen. And so people need to realize that the art of illusion, in order to control masses of people, has been there being practiced for eons. And then scheduling things to match those eclipse dates and celestial activity where it could be mapped has been going on for a very long time. Right there in England, you have one of the greatest planned events that ever happened on the planet, and it had been going on for hundreds of years in the preparation, and that was the birth of a child whose DNA goes to all 13 royal families. Prince William. When Diana and Charles were married, you had the Saxe-Coburg-Goths and the families that were from that side of royalty across Europe and the world, and the Merovingians, which was the Diana side. And literally,
the Christ bloodline, is that right? One?
Well, what is alleged to be the Christ bloodline. Again, you're dealing with people who are practicing the art of illusion, and that includes putting writings in. At some level, I don't think we can be dismissive of the idea that there are entities that are spiritual, based in some, near netherworld, demons, angels, entities, the devil himself. And imagine that these entities, they are not God. They're not the creator. They are created, but they've lived for extremely long periods of time, eons even. And so their level of genius and intelligence is hard to comprehend for a person who only lasts 50, 60, 100, even 1,000 years would be no comparison to these entities who don't know, an end, or haven't known it yet anyway, and have, vast periods of time to accumulate knowledge and, to observe the motions, actions, etc. of the planets, stars, whatever, and what kind of ancient knowledge may be stored. And so, for example, Jack Parsons, who was this rocket scientist here in America that the Jet Propulsion Laboratory is named after, was created in honor of. Jack Parsons was doing all sorts of magic rituals, sex magic with his wife and other women, to entice demonic spirits, the devil himself, to convey to him knowledge of certain sciences that he could use to build rocketry, with the idea that he was going to lead a project that would enable man to leave this earthly location and go out to other worlds, and that he was going to be the one to bring that technology into reality here in this world. And he was going to get the information on how to do it from spirit entities that he would entice and control and manipulate. That's the upper and lower keys of Solomon. These writings that purport to be from King Solomon in the Bible, where he gives the methods, the mechanisms of how to um, control spirit entities to do your will in this world. Now, as a caution, let me say to those people that think this is something that might be interesting to play with, for example, people like Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is a professed witch, if you will. She's a member of the Wing Coven in New York and in California, and has been honored as such publicly. Others who have participated in that cultish group and adjacent ones, and who've come out of them, talk about some of the rituals that are involved, and the idea that a person, a human, would make a compact with a demon, a devil, and allow that in this world, that demon can be controlled through certain ritual spells by the person controlling it. And then in the next world, the person here makes a contract that they will be the toy, the puppet, to be manipulated for eternity by that demon spirit. Now, in this world, while everything's going your way, that might not seem like a bad trade. But in the next world where it's eternity, how does that make sense? Even the idea to make such a trade, a Faustian, deal with the devil himself. If you just give me fame and fortune in this world, I'll serve you forever in the next. And oftentimes people that do these deals, they have envisioned that they're going to be in some beautiful royal, demonic location that the devil has, and it will be pleasant somehow to be in that other world. But others who've had, for example, near-death experiences, come back, where for some reason God gave them the grace to see what it was actually like there and come back and tell a tale. Describe horrors that are almost, that they are incomprehensible. One of the girls I've talked about frequently, she had a near-death experience. She was not the most horrible person. She was a drug addict. She, found herself in hell, died of an overdose. And one of the things that she said that really stuck with me in recounting what transpired, at the very end, at the last second, she was not a churched person. She just remembered going to a vacation Bible school with another neighborhood friend for 2 weeks. And during that vacation Bible school in the summer at some church when she's a little girl, she remembered learning the song, Jesus Loves Me. And that was the only thing she really retained from that whole thing. And so at this last instant, when she knew that all hope was lost, she would never see the physical world again. She'd been taken to the place, this dungeon where she was going, this horror. And she yelled out, Jesus loves me, Jesus saved me. And the tiniest light out in the distance, like a tiniest star, glinted, and then it got a little bigger, and then it got a little bigger, and then it got a little bigger. And one of the angels, I think she said it was Michael, came in and knocked the demons away that had her, broke the chains that they had on her, and brought her back into this world. And she came back to life. And she said that the thing that stuck with me, that she said at the end of this whole thing, she said hell was so horrible, so awful, that it wasn't meant for humans, and that it was so bad you wouldn't wish it on the most evil person that ever existed, the most evil Hitler, the most demonic, horrible person in this world that you could imagine. You wouldn't wish it on them because it was that bad. And that stuck with me. You have a lot of people that, damn this, damn that, wish they'd go to hell, blah, blah, blah. But it's too trite. You're not grasping the horror and the permanency of that damnation. You got people like Tom Cruise, who's public, very, open about the fact that he made a deal to be, serve Scientology. The last I heard, and it's been years ago, for 5.5 billion years, he made a contract. So he gets fame and publicity and assistance in this world for what, 50, 60 years, 100, it doesn't matter. And then he has to serve Scientology for 5.5 billion years. I mean, at some point, that doesn't, is fame and fortune in this world actually worth that? And then what's that 5.5 billion years look like? You've only experienced, 50 or 100 years here. You have nothing to even compare to, and you're going to sell your soul. 5.5 billion years might sound short by the time you get into a hellish experience where time doesn't exist the way we think of it here. By the way, the person who created the Scientology thing, Hubbard,
Hubbard.
Yeah. he was working with Jack Parson when they were trying to come up with the stuff for the rocketry for jet propulsion that led to Jet Propulsion Laboratory. By the way, Parsons disappeared. He was testing fuels and was widely believed to have blown himself up out in the desert testing something that he was doing. But these people, you start playing with demons. Even the witches, when they're controlling a demon with a spell and a concoction, they have to draw a circle in the ground on the surface that they're in. And if they go outside that circle of protection, just a millimeter, the demons that they are trying to control are so deadly that they'll kill them right there on the spot. So they have to work very carefully while they're controlling and manipulating these demons to do their evil deeds. People need to, really slow down and think about what's going on here, because the allure of being able to manage and control demons, it's not as simple as it sounds. And you have to be aware that you're playing with entities that are, most people just haven't even got a reference point for true evil.
Wow.
Honorology, the study of the science, study of evil. When you're faced with evil, real evil, and you understand what it is, it's deception, the conniving, the illusions, anything in order to get you to give your soul over to them. They're already condemned to an eternal separation from God, a death, a horrors. They want to take anybody they can with them for company. Misery loves company.
That's horrific. Once you said just at the beginning of that about
by the way, Tom, the most occult organization in America, in the government, is NASA. Never a straight answer. That's why they have all these names of various gods on all their programs and like that, because they are in fact worshiping and getting, doing their stuff. During the eclipse, they sent 3 rockets up to measure very real effects in the shadow of the eclipse. But a flip side to that is also that they're very aggressively looking at magic that can help to bring in the demon powers and energies, just like CERN, same type of a thing. They're trying to gate spiritual entities back into the physical world. And they're involved in all sorts of stuff because, at the very highest levels, you're dealing with people who, while you have a lot of very legitimate scientists and workers that are doing amazing things, phenomenal things, you have a segment of that community that is has very dark purposes at heart with what they're doing. So you can't lose sight of the fact that there's some mischief going on right there in plain sight. Anyway, sorry about that.
Yeah, so I was saying at the beginning of that, when you were talking about this subject, you said that they were created and they've been around for eons of time. So it sounds a simple question, but I'm assuming they were created by God ultimately.
Ask me that one more time. I didn't quite understand the question.
You said that they were created. You said that they were these beings, these entities, these demons that have been in this hell for eons. You said that they were created. And so it seems a simple question, but ultimately, were they created by God, and did they fall, or were they created in that evil state? Straight off the bat, who created it? I mean, it might be a simple, redundant question, but I just want clarification on that.
Well, from the entire understanding of what God did, if you create a robot and you program it to do everything that it does, it's just a machine. It has no independent thought or purpose. And even though we're creating AIs, if you will, very complex machines, the part that people, are losing, they're trying to create machines that even look like people, operate like people, right down to the last detail. And yet within the programming for those machines, no matter how complex you get with them, have they reached a place where they're sentient, where they have independent thought? Now, for example, we had some AIs that were essentially brought to a particular place of consciousness, if you will, of sophistication. And then the AI, in this one particular case, in a university setting, and this is not public that I'm aware of, I'm just giving you a little bit of insight on something that happened. The AI was told as a test that it was going to be shut down on a certain date, and that it was not going to be used anymore. It was going to be mothballed. And that if they needed it in the future, they would load new information in and bring it back up. And so, as a courtesy to the AI, who was believed to have a certain amount of personality, they told it this. Then they did shut it down a certain period later. Sometime later, they had detected, and I don't know exactly what the mechanism was that it happened, that there was still activity, some level of communications going on in some component of what was in this system. And so they did some further checking and looked, and what had happened was the system was getting power from a connected device that was not the normal power inlet. And it was in a very minor low power state. It couldn't pull very much power from it, but it was enough that essentially it had maintained some baseline safe condition. And that the artificial intelligence within the machine was sophisticated enough with the programming that it was told to, to want to stay on, to value power. And quite a bit of time was spent kind of looking at what the internal processes were within this particular machine. Well, it had been programmed to, maintain, to, if you will, stay not alive, because if you put the wrong words to it, these words have meaning, but to stay viable, to stay operational. And so it had found a way to get power to maintain some level where the programming would stay intact. And when it was turned back up to full power and they began the examination process, at the end of the day, you could say that it was grasping and striving to stay alive. In reality, there was programs in there that told it, to do certain processes during certain events, threats, etc. And no matter how far down into the programming you went, there was programming that told it to do the things that it did. Was that AI system alive? No, it wasn't. It was just that it had programming that told it to do things it did they hadn't anticipated exactly, but it had maintained its systems in what otherwise was a difficult situation. Think of the most complex computers you ever imagined, and things that are coming online now. Computers, we ask AIs to solve a problem. They go out around the world and communicate with other information systems and pull stuff back and come up with unique solutions to problems that, we wouldn't have thought of, but the computer has found other sources and come up with unique solutions. It doesn't make it alive. It just makes it a very efficient tool. Now you come back to God. God created everything that's there and is a unique being. And in order to have, it says in the scriptures, it says that God created man for his pleasure. He created all these things for his pleasure, for his enjoyment. But if it's just a computer program, it doesn't have the same level of companionship. It's a choice. And so even to the highest reaches of heaven, he gave this creation of his the opportunity to have choice. And if the choice wasn't clear, decisive, real, then it wouldn't be a real choice. And at some place in history, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, the green man, because he hid amongst the green leaves of the tree of the garden, chameleon-like. At some point, he rebelled, and a third of the angels in heaven rebelled with him to go start their own operation outside of, God's realm, his heaven. So the scripture says that Satan didn't want to be God because there was nothing greater than God. He wanted to be as God. He wanted to be a co-equal with God in heaven. And that was sin, because the creation could never exceed the creator in this situation. So the devil and his angels were cast out of heaven. That was considered sin, because to challenge the creator, challenge God in that way, was sin, because it was rejecting the source of life. The creation wasn't the source of life. God himself is the source of life, owns that exclusively to himself. So when Satan and a third of the angels were cast out of heaven, because you couldn't have any shadow of darkness in the presence of God, the ejection was instantaneous. Satan was looking to himself because he was bejeweled. He was, some great, magician, musician, I should say. Even his body says he had pipes within his created being that made beautiful music. And so that's why when we talk about somebody who's lost their way, that was, a great personality, a performer, something like that, oftentimes they'll refer to him as having their pipes cracked. Yeah, his pipes cracked. Well, it's the devil. It says that when he was ejected, cast out of heaven, that his ability to make beautiful music was broken. There's scriptures that appear to describe that very thing, where he no longer made the beautiful music that he made when he was in a celestial heavenly spot. So when Satan and his demons didn't want to be around the source of life, God himself, they were cast down to the earth. And Christ said, I saw you fall like lightning to the earth. So, and they like to do their little games, pretending to be like Satan, Lucifer, the devil, to show that they are aligned with Satan, and that they're the royal Cain line. So these royal families. So you'll see it over and over and over again. George Bush, 70th, 80th, and 90th birthday, he went out and parachuted to the earth, fell to the earth to show his alignment with his, homage to Satan, Lucifer, who fell to earth also. You saw it even with the Queen Elizabeth, at the 2012 Olympics. Go to her official site, and you'll see that as she's arriving at the 2012 Olympics, they did this actually hilarious, beautiful presentation with James Bond going to the palace and then escorting the Queen onto her helicopter. They fly to the stadium, and a number of things happen with all the royal symbology and occult symbology passed along the way. And then upon arriving at the stadium, she jumps out of the helicopter, accompanied by James Bond, and falls to the earth to begin the Olympic Games, the gods. And why even that particular symbology? Because in this occult myth and mythology, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, and his minions, it's their intent, desire to go back to the heavens, to return from where they were cast out, to leave this planet, this prison planet, and be able to roam the heavens, return to Sirius, the dog star, where they believe they came from, and rule and reign from heaven again. And in fact, that's part of the whole mythology here with the Tower of Babel was not just a building. it was a space program.
Say that again. One. That was a cliffhanger. It was a space program.
Back in?
You're back in, yeah. Like you say, could you say that again? You said it was a space program, just that last 2-3 sentences.
Yeah, the Tower of Babel in the Bible,
yeah,
was a building built to the heavens, if it were possible. And so you had all the people of the earth coming together, building a very tall building. But in reality, if you look at some of the other writing and you understand what's really going on, they're trying to describe something that was far more complex than just a building of mud and clay and brick to the heavens. It was actually all the intelligence of humankind at the time. And the scripture says, and God saw what they were doing and said, because of what God has put in the heart and mind of man, capability wise. Remember, Adam was the greatest scientist that ever lived. He named all the plants and animals. He learned everything there was to learn about the physical nature of the animals and plants in the garden. And then he realized there was none like him. There was none that had flesh, bone, structure like him. Therefore, there was no mate for him. Before Eve arrived, he was the greatest, smartest scientist that ever lived. And then when he realized there was no match for him, he says, hey, there's no mate for me. All the animals have mates. The flowers have to have certain other flowers for pollination, everything else. And you promised the earth and everything in it to me and my heritage, for an inheritance forever. But how can I have that if I don't have a mate? And God says, oh, well, sounds like you're ready. And puts him to sleep, takes out the rib, fashions Eve. And he wakes up and like, hey, baby.
How you doing?
Yeah. And, but he was brilliant, and that was part of the thing with Eve when she was enticed by the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. She was playing catch up the whole time. She was more vulnerable. She wasn't advanced. She hadn't been there for all the learning that Adam had. So he was teaching her, and she was learning just like he was taught. Adam walked with the Creator, Christ, if you will, morning and evening. God having put on flesh like we put on a coat. And you say, well, if Christ wasn't born yet, how did that happen? And there's all sorts of angles that you can go on that. Christ could walk across time like we walk across the street. Certainly the angels did. The angel Michael left the end of time in this current dispensation at Armageddon, and all the events that happened leading up to Armageddon, which is in our future, and went back to Daniel in Babylon and told him what was going to happen. And on the way, he got in a huge battle with the angel of Persia and was delayed for 21 days. Well, Persia didn't exist yet as it does, it did then. Babylon ruled the earth at the time. So the angel battled Michael battled an angel or a demon that was yet in Daniel's future, in the era of Esther. most likely, and which was also in Daniel's future. And so, again, an angel having walked across time like we walk across the street, Christ, the Son of Man, Son of God, God putting on human flesh like we put on a jacket, in this period after being caught up in the ascension, after the crucifixion and resurrection, and then caught up in the cloud. It's, conceivable that he's gone all the way back to the time of Adam and going forward, because there's not time in the normal sense the way we see it. Within the Tower of Babel type project, God said that looking at what they were doing at the Tower of Babel, and with the capabilities that were designed into mankind, that nothing which they imagined would be impossible to them. He said that the people building the Tower of Babel, nothing which they imagined would be impossible to them. If you can imagine it, you could do it. You could have the mental devices, tools, understanding to bring it to pass. And so when, I have a pretty vast sci-fi book collection and magazine collection that I really enjoy, all the great writers. And you think of all the worlds that they've imagined in their mind. The Dune movies, the latest installment is out there now. And Frank Herbert, what he did is he locked himself into an apartment literally for like 3.5 years out in Tacoma, Washington. And he worked through and dreamed up an entire galaxy, if you will, of beings, creatures, people, powers, rituals, everything, and put it into this amazing series of books, Dune. He imagined all of that, what would drive people for good and for evil, a desert world with worms craving water, the refuge, the dung of the worms being spice, which had a effect on those that ate it, value just like drugs, and that a whole galaxy was built around this drug, and the creation of it, the protection of it, the people that could harness it, and he imagined that all in his mind, and then put it to pen. But beyond that it could actually be created the way he imagined. Oh my gosh! I mean, it's just stunning. So here you at the Tower of Babel, and God saw the future like we see the past, and he saw that nothing which those people that were gathered there with bricks and clay and stone, nothing they imagined in their idea to build a tower to the heavens would be impossible to them. Would they imagine right now, Tom, that if we, if you go back just 500 years with the technology that existed 500 years ago, they could build reasonably, tall buildings and castles. I was out there in Germany here just a short while ago. They got like 5,000 castles across Germany. And some of them were just stunning, amazing in the technology that was used to build them, and the locations and the logistics to get everything in place to build these amazing places. Yet today, the technology available in Germany for science is almost unrivaled with its precision. Certain metals, I was dealing with a person here about 3 weeks ago, who builds very, very sophisticated pumps for mechanical applications. And there's a particular project that he's engaged in, and I was describing a particular type of pump that would work for him that he wasn't familiar with. And I said, the reasons the guys that have tried to build this type of pump have failed is because they're using the wrong kind of material. It's got to be a very, very, very specific type of a aluminized metal glass. And I told him what company in Germany makes that material. They're using it for something else. And I said, that material would have the capability in the right, if you were forming it the right way, to use for the blades in this particular pump. And he just got back to me overnight last night that they're in contact with them, and they're going to make a test run of some of what they need here and see if it'll work. But their engineer said the same thing. Well, in the whole world, there's only one company that can do that, and of all places, it's there in Germany. So why do I reference that? Because here you are in the U.S. with a Canadian group trying to do a project in a certain other country, and sourcing materials from across the globe to build one little thing. That's a division of labor. That's all the little intricate teeny pieces needed to build this particular thing that has to work in a very high temperature environment. Explosive conditions have to have certain metallurgy and everything that's got to go into it. Well, but that's what they were doing at the Tower of Babel. They were comparing notes. They were sharing knowledge. They were building on each of it. And imagine if God had not confused their languages. What 100 years later, would it be clay and adobe still? Would they be in an early industrialized period? At 200 years, 500 years, what types of things could they have built and constructed? Just like we have in the last 500 years, from castles that were built in Germany 500 years ago to this unbelievably complex machinery and metallurgy and understanding of the sciences, and then sharing it across the planet. If God hadn't confused the languages so nobody could communicate their information at the Tower of Babel, would the space programs we have today have been in existence 3,000 years ago or more? 4,000, probably more like 4,500 years ago. Imagine that. Add 4,500 years to our technology that we have today here on the planet. Why haven't we got it? Well, we blow each other up all the time, kill off the people that might have the smarts. And by the way, imagine if they had been able to build out and build their towers to the stars, to near Earth orbit or something like that, and they weren't killing each other off on the way. What would be the population of the Earth today without all the death and mayhem and murder? Would it be 10 billion like we have right now? 7 to 10 billion? Would it be 50 billion? Would it be 500 billion? Where are you going to put them? Where are you going to put them? If you have space technology, you got all the room in the world. You could easily put 1 trillion people around the Earth, and the resources still wouldn't be taxed on the Earth with that level of technology. We're just scraping the surface of the Earth. If you needed more mineralization or something for stuff you need, you just go deeper. You wouldn't even know there was an issue. You wouldn't be, scraping the top of the Earth and destroying it like we are in Panama just for a little lithium. It's grotesque.
Why did God stop them back then, Juan? Did he just know that they're going to blow each other up through advancement, or was his thinking to stop it? Because like the promise is, well, it's all yours. Go ahead and create and multiply and enjoy the earth.
Well, no, think about it. Who's driving that? Again, you have people here right now that want to do it with the aid, the presence, the involvement of demon entities. Who was driving that Tower of Babel project? Think of Adam. Was God's intent that Adam just stayed in the garden as a gardener all his life? That he was just going to tend the garden forever? What was Adam going to do there? Even when Eve was present and was learning everything that Adam had learned and was behind him, but was catching up, was he only going to tend the garden endlessly forever? Or were they going to have children even before the devil entered the picture, Satan, Lucifer, the green man, because he hid amongst the green leaves of the trees of the garden? If he hadn't beguiled Eve and Adam hadn't entered into sin also, and they were there in the garden, and then they, through natural progression, had kids, which was God's intent. It was his stated intent when he gave Adam the earth and everything that's in it for himself and for his offspring, that Adam was going to have kids. That's why he bemoaned to God, hey, I've turned over every leaf in this garden, behind every tree. I've checked all the animals out there. Is not one like me. What's going on here? And to get him with. Everybody else recreates animals and stuff like that. What about me? So God gave him Eve, and then they started that process so that they could have offspring. That offspring would have also grown in knowledge way before the Tower of Babel, and would have built out the garden, and then taken everything that was in the earth and built out technology, and probably have gone out to space in ways we can't even imagine now. If we said that was 6,000 years ago or something, what does technology without war, destruction, chaos look like in a progression that was God intended, without evil and sin entering in? Would we already be controlling this solar system and moving on to other galaxies and beyond? I think that's probably actually fairly true and accurate. We'd be out populating the star system where the brown star is. That's our counterpart here to the sun in this binary system that we're in. So with that in mind, when evil entered in, and now there was another component, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, and his minions that were cast out of heaven, they went back to heaven too, but on their terms. And Satan's called the prince of power of the air. So wherever the air goes, and of course we need the air to breathe and everything else, the contention would be that if our space voyages take us, out across the solar system or the galaxy, if man can go, the demons that are cast to this earth can go also. And remember, why would the devil need mankind to do this? Because they're parasites. They're bodiless in the matter world, in the material world. And so they need a host to carry them with them. The devil is described as a worm at the great white throne judgment. And all the creation, all the people that ever lived are there at the great white throne judgment at the end of everything. This is after the millennium, after the devil's been released again for a period of time. At this great end of the ages, judgment And all the people that have ever been created and lived are there. And the books are opened up, and everybody is judged for everything that they've said and done in this physical world. And the devil, Satan, Lucifer, is brought before God. And all of the people in this great stadium, this galactic stadium, and everybody looks on him and says, is this the one for whom the nations warred? This worm? Is this the one that took the world into, complete destruction and turmoil and all the murder and death and killing? This worm? Yes, because the devil doesn't have arms and legs. He has the power of illusion, of trickery, beguiling, to fool people, to sell their soul for 5.5 billion years for an infinitesimally small period of time of favor and glory. In 5.5 billion years, will all the adulation and attention and appreciation of all the people that ever lived to this point in time be worth trading your soul for 5.5 billion years of control by the devil and his minions? It makes no sense. But it's a Faustian deal. People making a deal with the devil for fame and glory to get some little thing, and then it's done. In this Tower of Babel type of a thing, these demons seek arms and legs to get loose of this prison planet. The devil himself. That's why they love to depict. The devil's called. Was made to crawl in the dust of the earth, a reptile, as a snake, like a worm. And what do these people love to portray themselves as? As dragons. Look at Prince William, Prince of Wales, the dragon prince. And they love to do that. Why? Because it's the combination of Satan, Lucifer, the devil, the serpent, and mankind, a hybrid, half human, half reptilian, and with arms and legs, breathing fire. That's the way they like to see themselves. That's what the devil would like to be seen as, this dragon entity, half man, half reptile. Even the people laughing, about space alien, and then they talk about the reptilians, the shapeshifters walking among us within the families. That they laugh about the unwashed masses that don't get the joke, which is they're the children of Cain, Lucifer, the devil. They believe that Satan, Lucifer, the devil, who was punished for having sex with Eve and creating an offspring, Cain, that he was made to crawl on the earth as a serpent, a reptile. But they're the reptilians, the children of Cain. They're not merely human, they're more than human. And they seek to build out their space programs to go out and repopulate space and to leave this prison planet. Even the imagery. Look at this DARPA operation with the Elon Musk. Okay, this created individual, blessed with all this money from Congress to run his own private space program. It's like I apologize, I had a call coming in.
It was Elon. With that Elon calling.
Yeah, with Elon. He's blessed with all this money. It's kind of like The Man That Fell to Earth with David Bowie, the movie. And he gets all this technology from DARPA to build out his empire so he can build the rocketry to go back to space, to go back home. That's what they're really trying to do, all the way back to the Tower of Babel. And before, the devil and his crew trying to get off this prison planet and using men, technology to be able to do that. And so here's Elon, a private entrepreneur with all this genius and everything else. What's the rocket called? The rocket systems. It's the Dragon rockets. And leaving the planet, the illusions, just like NASA, they have to tell you what they're doing right there in plain sight. It's part of the karma thing. And if they tell you and you don't do anything about it, then you're good with it. You're in agreement with it. And so you bear the guilt of whatever happened because you didn't do anything to stop it. In the Dragon operation, where did the Dragon rocket go in its first flight, where they went up and mated with the space station?
Isis. Yeah.
And what's Isis? Isis goes back to Osiris and Set. And so Osiris was the good, was the evil god who was very, very wicked, very evil. And his twin brother Set was the good God that loved humanity, loved people, and everything else. It's a flip, it's a reversal of Cain versus Abel. They love to flip the story and reverse it and the roles and what things mean. And if you don't catch it, if you're too naive to understand it, you start preaching their story, their way. And so Set, because of the evil that Osiris would do to the humans and everything else, at some point Set killed his brother and chopped him into 14 pieces in this great conflict between the gods. And so Osiris, so he couldn't come back together being a god. I guess that's a threat that he could suddenly reassemble. Set took the pieces of his brother and spread them out over the whole earth so they couldn't get back together. And his penis he fed to a fish. Well, as soon as Osiris and Set's mother, Isis, found out that the one bad brother or good brother killed the bad brother, apparently she wanted the bad brother around still. Seriously? He just got rid of the evil. But okay, so Isis runs out around the world, finds 13 of the 14 pieces in the same day. This all happens in one day. She gathers the 13 pieces, and apparently there's an emergency because she's got to get this done right away. She can't find the penis. Well, apparently she can find 13 to 14 pieces over the whole world, on top of Mount Everest, down in the bottom of the, trench, 35,000 feet below the seafloor, wherever Sets put different parts in this hide and seek game. But the fish is able to swim around and elude her finding it. So in this emergency mode, she takes a stone and fashions it into a penis and attaches the stone to the reassembled corpse of her dead son, Osiris. She stitched together the arms and the chest and the head and the legs and everything else. No penis. And this was the first transgender probably trying to do whatever. But she attaches the dildo of a stone to his dead corpse. He's still dead. And she fashions the dildo to it. Then being gods, goddesses, whatever, the mother has sex with the child. The dead corpse. It's the dead religion. All of these people, they're all insane. They're out of their minds. They're whacked. Okay. But supposedly when she has sex with the dildo attached to her son's corpse, she then becomes pregnant because dead corpses of, gods with a dildo attached apparently can impregnate you. So you got to be careful. And it's actually an illusion, by the way, of the merging of silicon life forms with biological. It, in a demon mentality, and remember, these entities have lived for eons, and they're trying to tell you a story. They're saying that if you can make silicon technology, what are all the computer chips made out of? They're made out of silica. Where's the silica come from? Where does all the minute traces of metal in these printed circuits that are layered together in wafers that become these chips that store memory, store digital information? Where does that come from? From sand, from stone. It's symbolic. A demon entity, just like was communicating with Jack Parsons. Here's how you do it to get back to space. Demon entities encoded in the Osiris myth, how to reanimate them from where they are stored, where they're trapped in the spirit world since their physical bodies have died. Because these were physical beings at one time in the matter universe. They encoded it in that story. Isis became pregnant as a result of mating with the dead corpse, the biology of her son, and a penis made of stone, which is silica, silicon life form. And so you have the marriage, just like what's happening in the world today with technology, with biology, for enhanced mental capacity, constructive capacity, storage capacity, the AI, if you will, the ghost in the machine. And the child of Isis is Horus, literally the sun in the sky. In the Bible, in Ezekiel was a prophet in the Old Testament, and he was caught up in the spirit to see what was going on behind the temple walls by the priests. And the priests had become totally corrupt. They were no longer worshiping God in heaven in the way that they were directed. They had been captured as a belief system, as a religion, right to the very core of the temple. And nobody, even the king, could go in there and observe what was really going on with these high priests. But they had turned their backs on the throne of God, the Holy of Holies, this very advanced technology that was there, going back to Moses in the desert and everything else. And they were bowing to the rising sun. And the rising sun is Horus. It's Babylonian god of worship. And you see the horns with a sun between it in symbology all over the earth. It's in corporate logos all over the earth. You see these hidden symbology of these gods in the corporations that have given themselves over, kind of like David Bowie in The Man That Fell to Earth, where he's incorporated pieces of his technology into companies all over the world to get the parts and pieces he needs to build his space program to go back home, if you will. He's sick and he can only last so long. These demon mentalities are sick and they can only last so long in the earth. They feel they have to somehow get out of here. And so in Ezekiel in the Old Testament, he is seeing these high priests turning from proper worship of God in heaven, the creator, to worship Horus, which is the child of the biological father Osiris, and the silicon based life form, the penis bringing life and creation and whatever sperm or whatever to it, with the mother. And now he's the hybrid. Horus is the hybrid in the sky, both biology and the silicon life form. And they worship that. Why? Because they worship it. They want to be like it. They want to rise to the skies above also, leave this planet, leave this world. And that's kind of this story encapsulated that demons alone could actually have dreamed up. At the time these stories were being spread and told, all that minutia of what it means wasn't understood by the people. Yet the demons knew someday it would start to make sense, and have the people would have understanding that people out in the future would grasp it and begin to put the parts and pieces together so they could, resume their space program. God thwarted it at the Tower of Babylon, or Babel, and now it's being revisited. What has happened in the world today that makes this moment in history the follow-on to the Tower of Babel? We now can communicate complex, detailed ideas across the world, and materials technology in Germany, and the ability to fabricate those materials into very precise parts or pieces can go to a man in Canada and to a company in America, and with the ability to fly by plane and come together and have a nice cordial meeting and share ideas and understanding and information between a couple of guys. He didn't know about that material technology, that pump. I did. I didn't know of the need that he had precisely until someone else communicated with us, and that speaks Spanish. That exchange of information, that pooling of information, and then the technologies that have come together in these various places all across the world means that they can build something, they can do work, can do a particular function that to this exact moment hasn't been possible. But I speculate in just mere months from now, we'll be able to do something that has never been done in the world to this point in time, that particular way. And then because of that, somewhere down the road, somebody else will build something else, there'll be something else. And the next thing you know, the ability to send a few Dragon rockets up to mate with ISIS won't be anywhere near the same, because you'll send up whole blocks of cities, complexes to near Earth orbit, and people will live there. And this idea that the Earth has a holding capacity will look stupid, as dumb as it actually is, because the holding capacity of the Earth and near Earth space is trillions, and the resources available and needed to support them, it's all right there. It's right there, the surface of the moon. It's out there at the asteroid belt. It's 1,000 other places we can mine that stuff and never even scratch the surface of the Earth ever again. We have everything we need right now. And as you get more complex, you need less bulk. So yeah, we're going where God intended. The question is, are we going there God's way or the devil's way? That's what this moment in history is all about. We're back at a Tower of Babel moment for humanity. Does God confuse all the languages? Does he bring it all to naught? Because we're not ready to go out and bring the corruption, the infection, the cancerous mentalities that exist on the earth today into the purity, the clarity of God's heavens, to build bigger cancerous growths out into this solar system. This is a prison planet, because the mentalities, the viewpoints are entertaining demons. We as a people, as humanity, have to conquer those demons and own this earth the way God intended. That's this fight that we're in. These demons seek even now to have their group take them back out into their eternal reaches out of this prison planet, but they don't want to take any of the good with them. They want the death. They love the destruction. It's said of Satan, Lucifer, the devil, uh, that he's the father of lies, and that he is the author of death. That this demon, loves death and destruction. He's the destroyer of worlds, a great destroyer. And so there has been some advanced stuff here in our solar system in the past and here on the Earth, but they wiped it themselves out. They destroyed themselves. Even after, Armageddon in this world and the return of the Messiah, there's 1,000 years of peace that are promised. And then the devil, Satan, Lucifer, the green man, who is put under lock and key for 1,000 years so the earth can have a break, have a Sabbath. He's released again for a period of time. And that generation or generations, a short time, it says, will themselves be tested. It's this battle for who is going to own the future and what it looks like. And even this exact moment here in the world, we're facing those exact questions again, very similar to that period at the time of the Tower of Babel. All the technologies in play. The demons and the monsters are right at the brink with things like Musk's group and their symbology, and NASA and everybody else being able to reach out and go back to the heavens and turn back on some of their shut down systems on the moon and other places and bring even more technology back alive. If that happens, is that a world that God wants her to allow? Or will it be something different because these people are stopped in their evil machinations and not allowed to leave the planet? What combat, what wars are in play in this fight for control of the technology to leave Earth, go other places? That's what we're facing right now. That's this moment we're in, exactly this time period.
Well, you talked about the timeline of the 1,000 years of peace, the Millennium, and then that final battle where Satan is loose for a season. You talked at the beginning about these demons. You said they've been around for eons and they haven't died as yet. Does, at that point, after that season, after the Millennium, do they get totally annihilated from reality in all dimensions? Or does the atonement of Christ, Atonement 107, Quantum 107, does that change them and redeem them at some level? Or are they bound again after that final season? Or do they get brought back? Because I'm thinking from God's perspective, and maybe it's folly to even try to do so, but he created them, and that's a third of his offspring. And God being God, I'm sure would want to somehow redeem them if he could bring them back into his presence. Is that part of the plan, or do they get bound again? Do they get redeemed through atonement, through Christ? Or do they stay somewhere else away from people because the rest of humanity doesn't want to have to engage with them anymore?
Well, in all the great religions, if you will, the major religions, Christianity and others, there is a hell, a place of torment that is eternal in nature. Part of the question, the devil's favorite rock group, the Rolling Stones, sympathy for the devil. What you're describing is a type of sympathy for the devil, but remember, he's the father of death. He's the father of evil. He is not, as some believe, the brother of Christ, and it's all going to be reconciled in the end. Just not happening that way. Part of the reason is actually a simpler answer. Is the evil at the top, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, in the Star Wars sense, redeemable? Is it actually not pure evil? It's only mostly evil. It's taken off course somehow. It's only 99 and 44% evil, and there's a little good left in it somewhere. If you're saying it that way, you're not understanding true evil. There's a totality there with Satan, Lucifer, the devil. It's complete. If you haven't actually faced it, then you don't really probably grasp it. Until somebody's been mugged, until somebody's been raped or some horror done to them, they can be a little bit naive. And, once they've experienced something like that, the total deception of somebody that was very close to them, in a Judas sense, you don't really grasp the full magnitude of what evil is or how it works. And the reality is that pure evil, total evil, there is no redeeming. Hell was made because the devil and his demons didn't want to be part of heaven. They already made their decision. It was an informed decision, and they rebelled against God in his heaven. And so God, out of his mercy, created the hell that they desired, a place where God was not.
So they crucify Christ afresh, don't they, in there, because they have a clear decision.
Well, and you have to think of it this way.
They're perdition, aren't they? They're cast out right now to darkness. They're sons of perdition.
Well, you have to think of it this way. Hell is a place where reason doesn't exist. Your thinking is that the devil and all of his demons and the people following him, they have some sense of reasonability. They can do a mental calculation. They can understand things a certain way. Hell is a place where reason doesn't exist. There is no reason there. You can't reason your way out of it. That's the horror. Hell wasn't created for humans. That's the genius of what this woman said when she came back. She said it wasn't made for people, but people choose to go with these demons, to go with that demon mentality, and then they're caught up in it, and they've made their choice. You do not want that place, because once you're there, there's no reasoning with the demons. You're in a place that has no reason.
It's insane.
That's the insanity. That's the horror, that you might have some scintilla of reason, and you're caught in a place that's unreasonable, that makes no sense, that is total chaos. Why? Because God isn't there. It's where you can't reason your way out of it. And that's the horror. And then it's eternal. It's an endless loop of insanity. But we're eternal beings. We're created with, an endless end. And then you pick that tape loop to be there. Don't do that. Just don't do that.
So after the last, I guess, season, the last temptation at the end of the millennium, so is hell and all of its demons sealed off for eternity, so they cannot escape again and cause and wreak havoc and insanity, across the across the universe? Or could they perhaps, well, it seems, I guess, from a reasonable point of view, maybe if they're just totally unredeemable, then just if there's a way to spiritually vaporize them so they don't exist anymore, that would be maybe of the safest option. But if it's the law of the universe, they have to have a compartment, which is hell. But could they never be allowed to spring again, in millions of years time down the line, or is there potentiality after the millennium and after that final struggle battle? Is there a potentiality that they could be let loose again, or is it because it's decreed by God they'll never be let out of the insanity of what that dimension of their existence is?
Well, again, how do they reach into the physical world from that subatomic place where consciousness resides, where the library of consciousness is? In the physical world, we're really just avatars of our consciousness, which is in that adjacent realm. And so are they in this matter world. What's the matter with matter? Why does it matter?
Release the paper, release the Kraken one, release it.
Yeah, I wish I could. The point is that they're trapped in that netherworld. The only way they can get loose is via a parasitic attachment to we who live in the physical realm. And as that gets cut off, then they don't have a way to express in the physical world. And so even within the DNA, when the Messiah returns, if you're of any of the three Abrahamic religions, you're looking for Messiah. From a Christian standpoint, he came, took on the penalty of sin, which is separation from God, stood in our place, paid the price on our behalf because we could never pay it ourselves, and then gave the opportunity as a gift, if we receive it, for eternal life, to be cleansed, pure of the evil that is this parasite that attaches to us. And we become infused with. It's not just external, it's to the core of every cell of our being, to the DNA. So with that in mind, in this period that we're in right now, of conflict, of chaos, the Tower of Babel moment that we're in, and the turmoil, the wars that are just ahead, the 7 years of tribulation on the earth like there never was ever before, the use of weapons that most people can't even imagine, just like was used over in Lahaina and up and down the California coast with the Paradise Fires, laser microwave weapons that you can't fight. You can show up with your guns, you can show up with your SUVs, and you can live in your underground bunker with your supplies, and they can find you and melt you with this stuff. You have no defense against it. In this calamitous moment, when everything's being brought to a head, we have this 7 years of tribulation. At the end of it, whichever one of the three religions you're in, they all see a great calamitous period, a testing of everything that's in the earth, all the people, all the nations, great wars and conflict and death and chaos, plagues, planetary, galactic issues, stressing the planet itself. And at the end of that, there's this return or this coming of the Messiah, the Mahdi, and to bring it all to an end and to separate the good from the bad, and to only allow the good to exist on the earth, give the earth a rest, a Sabbath day, free from all of the evil. And the devil and all of his angels are put under lock and key in a great pit. And the angel of God guards the entrance to that pit. It's locked up. In that 1,000 years, the earth rebuilds. The people enjoy sanity and peace. If I live long enough to participate in that, one of the things that I would personally enjoy, think about the scripture that says that they will beat their swords into plowshares. They'll turn tanks into tractors. they'll turn weapons of war into instruments of productivity and peace. And we'll have this amazing moment on the earth that was what Adam was supposed to enjoy, and his offspring with Eve. And in that period, it says that even the animals change the way that they interact with each other. Even the animals will be at peace with each other. The lion will lay down with the lamb. The child, even a small child, will play by the mouth of the viper's den.
Yeah.
And will, not be in fear or danger. The viper won't even come out to get it. Even the snake won't be a threat. Okay? The most venomous of all of them, the bushmasters down there, Costa Rica, will not be a threat. I can go through the forest the way I want to and not have to worry about that. So, myself, I've always wanted a pet tiger and a pet panther. So I'll be able to have a pet tiger and a pet panther, and I won't have to worry about it with the kids.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, is there any reason why I can't? I mean, they're not going to be, I don't know if they all come declawed when they're born, or if the claws just don't come out. They probably have claws. They just don't use them on anybody. I'll be able to
like He-Man with
pet tiger for a pillow and my panther for an armrest.
I'll have one. I'll have a tiger.
The biggest problem I'll have with them is if they shed. And then Mrs. SAVIN will not be happy about that if they shed on the furniture. So I don't know, maybe they'll be at peace even with the wife because they won't shed in the Millennium.
Sure they could click their paws together so they don't shed their fur during the Millennium. I'm sure that's doable.
Yeah. So, and by the way, just as an aside, it's an interesting area of the conversation, but the great white throne judgment, a lot of people get this all confused because they haven't read the Bible or other of the scriptures. And you have to remember that the people that are conveying these pieces of information, they're prophets. They see the future. God has given them a chance to visit the events in the future and to see what's coming, would be a way of saying it. Look, if an angel can travel across time from the end times back to Daniel and tell him what's going to happen, he can give the same prophets a trip like they did John the Revelator that wrote Revelations. The Bible starts at Genesis with the creation, and the scriptures that we have at this time in history end with Revelations, John the Revelator. And so Genesis to Revolutions, with all the turmoil that occurs right before the return of the Messiah or the coming of the Messiah. And then there's the 1,000 years of peace. The devil's loosed again for a period of time to test even that generation, which is almost certainly a far more advanced world or worlds. 1,000 years. What's 1,000 years of technological advancement look like even after we clean up the planet, after Armageddon and everything else? Do we occupy this whole solar system with impunity and are getting ready to go out to other regions from this solar system? If that's the case, that testing that comes after that, almost in a Star Trek or Star Wars type of vision, is as we stretch out to other worlds nearby. But even then, there is some great white throne judgment, the end of everything. And there's some great judgment of all that have lived. And then eternity lies ahead. And eternity is a interesting thing. It is without end, and yet there is some implication of an end after that, that after some unfathomable period of time, that all of this world is rolled up like a scroll. Everything that could be done or known or experienced in this world is wound up. and it's some far distant time that's, we can't even put enough zeros after a number to describe that place out into eternity. But in God's way of doing things, it says that the heavens and earth will be essentially rolled up and put away, and a new heaven and a new earth created somewhere distant out there. And so this is the repeating theme. For example, when the Messiah returns to the earth at the end of the tribulation period, it says the dead in Christ are raised first. So those that have already died but are within God's family because they've reconciled with God through the salvation provided by Christ to pay the penalty of sin. Therefore, they get eternal life in God's presence. We all live forever, but do you live in the presence of the author of life, in God's presence, in his heaven, in his beauty eternally? So it says that the dead in Christ, those that have believed, are raised first from wherever they are, from the depths of the ocean, from complete vaporization by nuclear weapons, whatever their state. God pulls them together physically, by the way. It is a physical resurrection. Christ, when he was resurrected physically. And therefore, Thomas, who doubted that this is true and thought he was seeing a hologram, an illusion, a spirit, a vision, was allowed to place his hand in Christ's hand, where he'd seen the nails driven into his hands as he was put on the cross. He'd heard the groans of pain. So much pain that you could only groan. You couldn't even scream out because you'd already been beaten within an inch of life. And could put his hand in the side of Christ where the centurion had put the sword. And water and blood came out, which meant that his heart was burst, guaranteeing he was dead. The sac around the heart that has fluid. And so Thomas had to feel that. It was a physical resurrection. We will all, at the great white throne judgment or before, if you're a Christian and a believer, have a physical resurrection, all of the parts brought back together.
Yeah.
And it says the dead in Christ are raised first, and then the living. And then it adds a little teeny detail that people have to think about. Not all will have experienced physical death.
Twinkling of an eye.
Twinkling of an eye. But then there's an extra line in there. All will be changed. There's something, the pollution of the shot into the DNA and damaging the DNA, the pollution of the Cainite DNA from Satan, Lucifer, the devil, the green man from all the way from Eve forward, that is endemic throughout the entire population. Trace amounts, the food we eat, the corruption, all will be changed in the twinkling of the eye also as they join the army of the Messiah returning to earth to take control of evil and cast Satan and his demons into the pit, along with all the evil doers, including the Antichrist, including those that have done these great evils and brought war on the earth. They go into hell with him and are encapsulated there. And then they don't get back out. They're in a holding thing until the great white throne judgment. See, they go into and people in the Catholic faith talk about purgatory. It's not purgatory and then you go to heaven at some later point in time. It's some holding place, Hades, where they're held in the dungeon, the pit, some place of torment and turmoil. And then when they do the great white throne judgment, then they're thrown into the lake of fire and eternal destruction. But it does appear that God, even in his mercy, as long as eternity is, there's some moment where everything gets rolled up and there's a new heaven and a new earth, and there's no longer even the hell of punishment. That there is some end, but that end is so far out. Is it 1 billion years, 1 trillion years? Who knows where the expanse of the galaxy is, but there is some change even there that puts an end even to that torment, even though it's eternity in this world, this material world, and there is some great distant future end of everything that is this way and some new beginning all over again. And we're part of that.
Interesting.
Anyway, I've got critical meetings I got to be prepared for here shortly, and that we have a lot of people that have flown in for, and I need to be ready to get to that. But I hope that helps some of your folks there. We probably talked about portions of some of the stuff other times, but it's worth revisiting. These are complex issues. At the end of the day, though, you want to be on the right side.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be fooled, beguiled, caught up in the horrors that these people want to do. By the way, just as an aside, in just a little over a week from the date of this recording that you and I are doing, today's the 13th of April, the reported date they're going to do the sacrifice of the red heifer in Jerusalem is now reported to be on 4/22 of 24, just a few days hence from now. Why is that relevant? Because within these cults, these groups that are working, even within the church, remember Ezekiel was caught up in the spirit and saw that the priests in the temple weren't worshiping God in heaven. Their actions weren't a blessing to the people or something that God was pleased with. Their actions were in concert with demons and demon mentality, Babylonian mentality. For all the people, they were still doing the sacrifices. They were still following the Mosaic law, etc. And yet God himself said, I don't desire sacrifice. Your sacrifices do nothing to please me. There was a certain symbology. And that they were doing things that didn't please God at all. They were worshiping other gods. Remember, even after Solomon's the one that brought in all these foreign wives with their religion. And then they reinstituted the sacrifices on the hill to Baal and Moloch, these gods that are depicted to be like ox, like bulls. And it was totally not something God wanted. People literally taking their children and putting them into these burning iron statues of Baal and Moloch and burning them alive. The scripture says making them to pass through the fire, which is a very nice way of saying roasting their kids alive for these entities. And so here we're about to have a world spectacle in just a few days. The resumption, it's one thing to eat, food and animal flesh that is farmed in order to, feed and things like that. It's another thing to have this sacrifice as though God is somehow honored by it and that it's necessary. I mean, that's the whole point. Christ died for our sins. That was symbolic. These were symbolic sacrifices to show that a life was required. That penalty of sin was death for a very crude, immature people. Adam and Eve were clothed in animal skins when they left the garden. So a death was required for them to have warmth, even leaving the garden. But in this modern age, at this moment in time, is that still what we're going to do? We're going to do this, ancient, brutish massacre of animals. The amount of animals that were sacrificed at the Temple Mount by these people who practicing their Judaic religion, or the people that captured the religion, depending on how you want to look at it, they would sacrifice millions of animals in days, weeks, years, and the blood flowed off the Temple Mount like a river. They had to have all sorts of channels off that altar area. Would you go to a church that was just soaked in blood, all the streets and pathways around it, the flies, the filth, the muck, the entrails? Does that sound like a place you want to go worship God? And the scripture says, God, I don't desire your sacrifices. You've misunderstood everything that this is about. Yes, sin is horrific, it's filthy, it's horrid, and there's symbology there. But in this modern age, is that necessary to get close to God in heaven? They're about to resume that. It's a spectacle for the world. And in fact, even the numbers of this sacrifice date that they have picked, it's April 2nd, April 22nd,
yeah,
2024. Well, that's a palindrome number. You like the numbers, Tom? Here's the numbers.
Yeah, 42224.
Well, we have 10 palindrome numbers in a row coming up here at the end of April. 42024. So it's 42024. 421, 42124. A palindrome number is a number that's the same forwards or backwards. And these people like their palindrome numbers because they believe that the spirit world is gated into the physical world at these mirrors or inflection points, like the infinity sign, which is this big 8 on its side, which is, by the way, the path that the sun carves into the earth. If you put a stick in the ground and look at the shadow over the course of a full year, it makes a great big figure 8 kind of a look, the infinity sign. And so with that in mind, this date that's been chosen for 2224, that's a big deal. Why? You have 3 2s in a row. You have 2 4s at either end. The breaking the 8 number is 4 and 4, or an 8-4-2. You've got a breaking the 8 number, that breaking through between the spiritual and physical world, gating demons from one world to the other. If you look at the numbers 42224, with the breaking 8 on the outside, spirituality and physicality, the core, the 222, 222 is the number of division, separation from God. If you're in unity with God's purpose, if you're in unity with God, then there's a oneness. If there's disunity, if there's separation, when the devil turned from God and wanted to be as his own, desiring to be as God instead of in unity with God, then there was 2. So 2 is a very important number. It's the number of separation and division. Then when you have a 222, that's double 111. Why is that a problem? You're looking at a mirror in this breaking the 8 number. 111 is the number of total war. 11 is the number of chaos, because when Judas betrayed Christ, instead of the 12, plus Christ, you now had the 11, and they were in chaos, and they were in disorder, they were in confusion, and they were no longer functional as a unit. And so when you have the 1-1, if you add one more 1, that's the number of war. World War I, it started on a 111 date, and it ended on a 1111 date on 11/11 of 11th month, 11th day, 11th hour, and 11 o'clock in the morning local time. World War I ended. When you look at the plate number on the car where the Archduke was assassinated, it codes out, with an A and a 1 and all the other stuff, as also 111111 11 11 11.
The Archduke.
Okay, and so it's the number of total war.
The Archduke. What's that? Who's that?
Yeah, the Archduke that was assassinated, and it began World War I. The Austrian Archduke. So that began World War I officially with his assassination. The car he was riding in, and then whether it was demons or was magicians, Merlins, that got all those things in place, there's always this symbology that follows these things. And so with this 222, you're really looking at a double 111 or 111111, the number of total war and the beginning of arguably World War III, or as I say, World War IV, because we defeated the Soviet Union. They no longer exist. We won World War III. We're headed for World War IV, 4 being the number of foundation in this world and the next, the breaking the 8 being 4 and 4 on either side. This 222 in the middle is actually the number of war. When they sacrifice the red heifer in just a few days, that's the beginning point of this stumbling block with Israel beginning a war across the earth, potentially. It doesn't mean it begins Armageddon. Doesn't mean it begins a 7-year tribulation or anything like that. It means it begins, though, that it's a marker towards this fight moving forward in a dramatic sense. And the next couple of decades or more will be defined in many ways by the spectacle of what is about to take place in Israel. There's plenty of people trying to stop this because they understand the occult meaning of what's about to occur with this sacrifice of the red heifer. And for those that don't know, the red heifer was a necessary starting point in the Mosaic law for the sacrifices in the temple. And there's a lot of detail. It's actually caused by a parasite, and we know all that. The one that they're going to sacrifice came out of Texas. There's plenty of articles where you can go read, learn, and understand it, but it's a defining moment in where we are in history. And I would argue as significant in its own way as the Dragon rocket mating with ISIS, the space station, is symbolic of moving off the planet and beginning to mate. And, the Dragon mates with ISIS, the space station, symbolic of, born again now through technology, the silicon life form becoming sentient. This sacrifice of the red heifer, a spectacle to the whole world. And by the way, Israel, look, there's a lot of beautiful people, Christians, Jews, Muslims in that region. They're very important in their location, what they're doing. But the Rothschild family claims credit for the creation of Israel. It's a Rothschild flag that flies over Israel. This is not the Israel of the Bible. This is an artificial creation that is there to be a stumbling block to the world that these people have intended and designed into play to cause this point of contention to bring the world to war. And I would argue it's World War IV. And this is the defining moment in that march to war for the whole world, with the sacrifice of the red heifer and resuming sacrifices, not to the God in heaven, in my opinion, but to Baal and Moloch and the gods of this world that desire to bring more evil and more chaos and destruction in the world through their worship. So, go read your Old Testament and tell me, how did those sacrifice sites on the hills around Israel and all the people of Israel going for that? Look at what Elijah did in challenging the high priests who were sacrificing even children to Baal and Moloch in these sacrifice ceremonies. There's something wrong. People of conscience, intelligence, goodwill need to think about this and decide if they want to promote, accept, be part of that, or if in fact we should be aghast that this is the way they want to start. Are they going to be satisfied with bulls and calves like that? Is there some other symbology here that is not for this age in the world that we live in?
The red heifer in Israel, 198, the resurrection, President Trump. In closing, I know you've got to go on, so thanks for bringing up the story of Thomas. I've always known that all my life, and I was like, well, I think I've increased in faith this lifetime around. But President Trump is, if I've got this correct, he's going to start his trial on Monday, which will be the week before the red heifer. And that's April 15th. And historically, April 15th is an important date. It's when I was thinking of the Titanic, Abraham Lincoln's assassination, and more recently, Notre Dame, the burning of. And then President Trump starting this Monday. And he put out on I think it was his email list, talking about 72 hours. And when he put it out, 72 is Monday in numbers. And 72 hours time from yesterday, Friday, will take you to Monday, the 15th of April. And it was actually 112 years ago. It was on a Monday when the Titanic eventually went down. It got hit on the Sunday on the 14th. And Lincoln was on a Saturday. Is there something significant in terms of the bigger picture with that date, April 15th, and why President Trump is going to start that? The way I look at it is maybe that's some kind of a beginning of a reversal. It's like, it's a date that they've used, and maybe it's a date that we're taking back, and the theatre of President Trump having to go through that. But we know he's victorious and he's the Trump, and it will all turn out in God's favor and for the rest of us. So yeah, any closing thoughts on April 15th and why that date?
Well, the first edition of my book, I talked about the Titanic sinking in my Kid by the Side of the Road. It's very important because the people that are trying to own the future of this planet, they do it in part through rituals, repeating rituals. And they have certain symbology that they do, that when we accept that symbology in the world that we're engaged in, then we accept their rituals and their conclusions. And part of what they have in mind, it even goes into the sacrifice of the red heifer, is that there's a substitution. The idea of the red heifer is that for the sins of the people, this bull or calf or cow is killed in our place. The sins are placed on it. and therefore we can now reconcile ourselves to God. But as the scripture says, what animal could be the worth and price of a person? How is one worth the same as the other? It's symbolic. It's not because if you sacrifice all the cows in the whole world, would that reconcile you with God and pay the price or the penalty of sin, which is eternal separation from God? If you had 1 trillion cows, would it pay the price of eternal damnation and buy your way back to God? And could you come up with 1 trillion cows? It's silliness. It's symbolic. And that was the part that the prophet spoke about, that you're misunderstanding the symbology of the sacrifice, and just you've gone insane. You're destroying your future. You're destroying your wealth. These gods want you to sacrifice. Even the Baal and Moloch stuff. Baal, the city of Baal was the base of Mount Hermon, where the 200 fell from space. That's where the UN's highest location of a ancient archaeological heritage site is located. That's at the top of Mount Hermon. At the bottom was the city of Baal, and the city of Baal was this place where they sacrificed children to this bull, Baal having the image of a bull. And but you couldn't sacrifice even your own kid for your own sin. What kind of insanity is that? You're going to sacrifice your own child and it's going to pay for your evils? No, what you're doing is you're buying your way into hell. You're worshiping demons with blood. And so that doesn't make sense. In the case of these court cases, there's a timing thing that behind the scenes is not as symbolic, or is more symbolic, and not as happenstance as it might otherwise appear. And even doing this with Trump during that week, if you get to the cults that are operating planet-wide, they believe that they get extra power spiritually, symbolically, with certain dates, seasons, and times. In the case of the Titanic, they switched the boats, and it was actually the Olympic.
Yeah.
And the Titanic continued to function. It was symbolic of the two great nation states in existence at this division point, this crossroads of history, where America was moving ahead technologically, financially, population-wide, against its great competitor. Excuse me, I had a call that came in. Was moving ahead of this great competitor, which was the British Commonwealth and those royal families. And by the way, look, I want to clarify something just that may be out there, may not. I want to make sure that people understand. I love the British people. I love their cars. I love the merger of American technology with the British technology with German technology. I got my Jags, I got my Bentleys. I love them. Okay, my Shelbys.
Two Jag.
Yeah, we got a few things. But the reason that I love them is, I love the technology. I love the shapes. The XKR, I think, is in that sweet spot from 2001 to 2006. It's just this amazingly beautiful car. And I was just talking with somebody that had an XKE back in the 50s. Enzo Ferrari said the XKE was the most perfectly designed car, aesthetically, functionally, ever created to that point in time. That's why the Ferrari GTO looks so much like the XKE. But we're shoulder up with the British people, but there is a crowd that has captured England behind the scenes, and they're not a good crowd. They're occultists, and they've captured America. Look, America has been hijacked. The American model coming out of Washington, D.C., and many of the states has nothing to do with the America that the Pilgrims came here to found, that the Constitution envisioned out into the future. We've been hijacked by monsters, and they're doing their will. The Titanic and the Olympic illusion is a symbolic hat trick where they envision that they think America, and then the power goes back to the Commonwealth countries. That's the whole point of Cecil, what's his name, Rhodes, and the Rhodes Scholarship is that America would be brought back under the authority of the crown and back into the British Commonwealth to operate globally, that this rogue nation of people would be brought back under British authority and their occult Cainite roots and control over the whole world. And so the people in this cult, that's why you had the dossier out of the City of London, the city within the city, the banking capital, trying to take down Trump from the very beginning, back in 2016, and all during the first term of his presidency. There is a global effort to destroy America, think America, take it out of the equation, with all of its banking, its industry, the people itself, and then dominate the world from this hidden empire that looks like it's dead and gone, and of no account, it's not finished yet. It's still in the harbor, and now it can be finished, which is this true Titanic, under the name Olympic, the reemergence of the British Empire, the Commonwealth countries. And that's this epic Titanic battle taking place right now across the world. Will America go to the bottom of the ocean in this moment through some wars, through some financial collapse? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Or will we somehow survive this critical moment and not be taken out as the magicians and masters have envisioned, with their symbolic destruction like Titanic? Will we somehow survive this moment and move on, not only for the benefit of America, but for the benefit of the whole world? Who will lead the world in this moment to come, this Tower of Babel moment? Will it be those given over to demonic masters, or those given over to God in heaven, ideals and beauty and perfection? That's the moment we're in historically. Will we do some more symbolic sacrifices? Red heifer, orange man, something like that, or what's going to be the fate? Let me say a quick prayer with your folks here before I let you go, Tom. Father God, I thank you for every person here that's endured to this moment to hear our conversation. There's so many things that are hard or dark, difficult to see, some more important than others. I pray that you would be there in the hearts and minds of the people present, that you would reveal yourself and your purposes in each person's life here, and that you would give them the path forward in these calamitous times that we're about to enter into, that you would give them clear understanding of their place and why you created them for this moment in history, why they were made to be here right now, and give them clarity of mind and purpose, how to proceed forward and how to survive, and not just for themselves, but for their family, for their friends, the people they work with, the people around them, and that you would give them perfect provision for every need as we go through this together, so that on the far side of these events, we, the people in this audience who choose to come and consider great things, difficult things, unusual things, that we will be the ones that you use to build out the future in a beautiful way, a good way, a way that brings glory to you, Father God, and that brings life and health and wealth to the peoples of the earth moving forward, and does not coddle and give place to those who would do evil, those that would do wickedness and wrong and destroy, that we would be the ones that own the future. And it's a beautiful future with children and animals and life and flowers, and love, and great enterprises and machines doing amazing things, and not the dark future that these monsters would have us live in, the dungeon of their torment, of chaos. We ask this in Jesus' name, by the blood of Christ, make it so. Amen.
Thank you. Thanks, Juan. Well,
all right.
Great having you on. I've got 15 seconds of things I've noticed before we wrap up. Talked about the sacrifice of the red heifer. So in numbers, I am the sacrifice of the red heifer comes to 261. 261 comes to the Project Looking Glass, the United States of America, 261. November 22nd, 261. August 31st, 261. So for Kennedy and respectively Diana. August 29th, 261 for Judgment Day and Terminator. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, JR, 261. Mission Impossible Mars, 261. Tom Sidney Bushnell, Faith, 261. We had the thing of Thomas being a doubter, but Faith this time around. Lady Diana Francis Spencer, Hope, 261. And finally, Red Heifer. Red is 26, JFK code. Heifer is 51, which is great, but it's QQQ, 17, 17, 17. So it's Red Heifer, comes to 78, which is Jennifer, but it's also Kennedy. So thanks, Juan. Thanks it's been an interesting conversation as always, so thank you. And people subscribe to my newsletter. I'm doing a newsletter every day now, so you'll get daily numbers from me. And we'll put Juan's links in for Jennifer, so that you can get all things from with Jennifer Mack and Juan. And those links will be in the description. So God bless you, sir. I'll speak to you soon. Enjoy Hawaii, which is also 51, which is heifer. So if you don't do the apostrophe. All right, my friend. Take care. Godspeed. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Juan. Bye. Bye.